Hey, welcome to the first day of mini posture bootcamp. I'm coming here to remind you that these 3 days are an example of what's going to happen a lot deeper in the 40-day posture bootcamp. And if you're interested to dive deeper, please make sure that you check more of the details down below in the description section. Otherwise, these 3 days have plenty to offer to get you started if you're not in a place to invest deeper into reclaiming your posture. Hi, everybody. Hello. While we're settling in for everybody to join in for the call, hello from BC. Love that. I used to live in Vancouver for 12 years. Now I'm in the UK. So say hi to BC from me. As long as it's British Columbia in Canada. Before we fully settle in, I want to get a sense of what intrigued you to come to this live. What postural issues that you're dealing with, and what are you curious about to learn from today's session and these next 2 days as well. Like, it's a 3-day postural series. Okay, the scoliosis and stiffness, slumped shoulders, specific issues with the head, aging and posture, head forward posture. Yes, I will touch on head forward posture, and then we will be doing some specifically neck exercises in tomorrow's experience. So today I'm talking about more of the why. So I'm getting ahead of myself. So yeah, I love all these whatever that you're sharing in the chat. For those of you who are new to the space, my name is Hedy, and I teach change makers to uncondition their bodies, their nervous systems, their voices, and their posture from systems built to keep them small and keep them stuck. So we can stand, speak, and move through life with sovereign power. And what you're about to experience today, especially if you've done yoga and breathwork in the past, this might be a little bit different than what you experienced. And initially when I got exposure to this work, which I'm going to go into my journey a little bit further, it was very different than what I was used to. And it made me question a lot of the stuff that I learned. And if you've been in my space, I'm all about unconditioning and questioning the narrative and what we know and how can we improve what we know. I'm intending for the session to be between 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how much question is coming in. And for today's sessions, we will be mainly bringing the mind and the analytical mind into the conversation for us to understand the why behind all the teachings that will be coming up towards the end of today's session, as well as tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Yes, there are a lot of psychological stuff into that. So I won't be going into the psychological or somatic experiencing of the posture in this experience. But if you ever attended my lives on Monday, we do a lot of somatic practices on Insight Timer on Mondays to set an intention for the week. But oftentimes we go into that emotional side of the body a lot more in those experiences. But this is more like thinking about biomechanics and structural for these sessions, even though it addresses the nervous system elements a lot into the conversations that we're having, but it's not going to be a lot of psycho-spiritual work and the posture. And I also believe there are a lot of synergies, and hence why I bring all of that into my work. I've been in the movement space for the past decade, and I worked a lot in the bridge between personal training, strength training, and active rehab, and supporting people to come out of injuries into sustainably building strength without having recurring injuries. And that's something that I dedicated the past 10 years of my life learning. And in learning that, I needed to learn a lot of other stuff that also goes hand in hand with what I'm teaching on a fundamental level. So I started my practice as a personal trainer, and then it later evolved into movement coaching and also in the active rehab space working as a physio assistant. And then also my own personal injuries that really brought me to this point in time. Because if it wasn't because of my own personal experience, I wouldn't have had to deal with all that I had to deal with and to come to this point in time and knowing all I know. And there are solid up until this 10 years. And as I continue learning, I'm open to change my mind. And I'm also encouraging all of you to be open to change your mind, because some of the stuff that you're hearing, it might be the first time you're hearing them. So we live in this world that tells us that in order for us to fix the posture, we need to pull the shoulder blades back, chest up, and walk through life robotically long enough so our body can adapt, and suddenly we transform our posture into a perfect posture. But the truth is, there's no perfect posture. A good posture is a relaxed posture. There are some more analogies that I will be using tomorrow, but for today, I want you to think about a healthy posture is a restful posture right in the middle, and then we're traveling to the extreme. Extension, standing up straight or chest up, and then flexion, rounding. And we live in this lifestyle now with screens, and a lot of kids, especially nowadays, gonna have a lot of rounded shoulders and near neck positions, or like the neck head forward positions. And we will have a lot of conversation around those. But what I want to talk about is, through all that I'm teaching, I'm not suggesting any perfect posture. I'm suggesting an optimal posture, a restful, a relaxed posture. So we can travel back and forth between flexion, rounding, extension, standing. And there is a massive correlation between our brain and our body. So our brain, for survival purposes, constantly look for a center. So we're constantly in that dance between our body and the ground beneath us, or the gravity. We're constantly in that dance. And how can we optimally move and have that dance without feeling that we're dragging our feet, without feeling that we're only surviving? And again, in a system that makes us survive, choosing to thrive is an act of bravery. And all my teaching, whether it be somatic work or postural work or strength training work, all of that really at the foundation of it is, how can we find our sovereignty? And in this image, as you can see, like the middle photo is that optimal position, that the rib cage is right over the pelvis. We've got that core strength that is moving us and give us that stability to move nicely side to side or forward or backward. And the neck is free to move. In both of other positions, you see one of them, the rib cage is collapsed in, and the other one, rib cage, is flared up. So we will talk a lot about breathing mechanics, literally the mechanics of breathing, not like belly breathing or anything like that. We literally cover the mechanics of it. But today I will touch on it just a little bit towards the end. So you have some preparation, some exercises to prep the body for tomorrow's session. I want to start with my own experience, because if it wasn't because of my own experience, I wouldn't have been teaching this. And I made a commitment to myself that one day when I find the answer to all the pains that I was experiencing, I will be remaining committed to share this work. And obviously this is, like I said, it's never only the physical aspects or the biomechanical aspects. There are so many emotional stuff that goes into it that I'm not going to be covering in this session. But what I learned through this work, by creating safety in the body and in the nervous system, I also had the strength to be able to navigate a lot of emotional stuff and the PTSD that was resulted from the car accident that I had. So in the first photo, for a little bit of a context, I've always been active. I've done martial art. I've been really into movement, and I always enjoyed movement until I had a car accident that resulted in concussion. Obviously, I got a super late diagnosis that really impacted my whole system. And I was in chronic neck pain, upper back pain, and mid back pain constantly. And I also felt a lot of feet tension, and all that stuff was going on the right side of my body. And in the first photo, that was when I kept trying all kinds of movement that I knew would be helpful, like calisthenic, yoga, strength training. But no matter what I did, I always had a flare up, and I would have a lot of tension and pain. And I almost always had this fear in the back of my head that what if I get myself injured again? What if for the rest of my life I will train and I will be in pain and I never get to enjoy movement the way I knew it in the past? So if you're in that boat, I'm not going to say I have all the promises or all the answer, but certainly that can be an avenue to explore for you. So in the first photo, you see, I'm going to look at my screen because I'm seeing these ones flipped. So you look at the screen as I'm also moving my mouse and looking at my screen on this side. So if you look at my posture at the beginning of my journey, so I was very much belly breathing. I have nothing against belly breathing. I think there is merit in that. And I do practices like conscious connected breath work that has belly chest out practice, but I don't believe that's the most optimal breathing for our human posture. We're meant to use our diaphragm 360 degrees, and belly breath is only using 180 degree of that expansion, so we're not getting that back expansion that we need for optimal core strength and optimal posture. So here I was obviously like listening to all the gurus telling me pulling the shoulder blades back. I was pulling the shoulder blades back, chest up, and as a result of that, I had my rib cage flared up and I had almost no core stability, and also my pelvis was beginning to tilt forward and also make my pelvis and my lower body super unstable. And as a result of that, I was constantly creating stability through my jaw and through my neck because I had no stability in the core. And then I had a lot of tension in the back by really creating a lot of restriction in the back body, which also is in opposition by how much expansion you actually get in the rib cage for the lung to fully expand. So, and that also resulted in a lot of mid-back tension and lower back tension. And then later, I got introduced to what I'm about to teach you in this 3 days. And I started really putting into the work. Like I made it my daily habit to start optimizing my breath, doing practices to restore my core lining, as well as restoring my posture. And then this was when I would wake up in the morning without having any neck tension. So to give you a little bit of a context, after my car accident, obviously I did the typical chiro and physio, and none of that worked out because I was under so much tension and stress, and my nervous system was so jacked up that those kind of treatment would make me feel worse than better. I started feeling a little bit better after I started doing neurorehabilitation work, craniosacral therapy, for those of you who are not familiar with it, and then also PDTR and a lot of more nervous system oriented work that really gave me capacity to feel a little bit better and not constantly being in that state of stress. But even with those, even though I would feel really good after a couple of days, but all the tension would come back pretty soon after that. So I was constantly in this back and forth of getting the treatment, paying all the money, and then also being in the square one and constantly having that be my life. And this was when, for the first time, I would wake up a few days in a row without any tension. Like my habit was waking up and seeing how tense I feel in my neck or how tense I feel in my lower back. And then because of the restoration that happened in my posture, I began increasing my load in my strength training without having any flare-ups. And I really customized my strength training in a way that would support the intent that I had in my posture. Going back to the conversation that I had originally, that we are either in extension or flexion nowadays, a lot of the majority of the public that lives in this modern life, and we want to bring it more in the middle. So for me, I was pretty much in extension. So extension is a lot of stress. You're constantly dealing with a lot of stress in the system to maintain that extension day in, day out. And I always say posture is a lot more than your neck or your shoulders. It's a lot deeper than that. And as you can see, my jaw shifted as I started doing this work. And it was shocking because when I started speaking after a little while after my accident, I would record myself due to my work, I would see my jaw constantly shifting to the right. And then my teeth also, if you see now, they're a little bit shorter on one side than the other because of the amount of pressure that I had. And there is a massive correlation between your relationship of your jaw and your pelvis. And that also at its core is your core stability. At its core is your core stability. That's the depth of the power of optimally working on your posture and not trying to fix one thing and looking at the whole system. And at the foundation of it is understanding your breathing mechanics and improving that. And the other thing is when you go through life, you're constantly in this dance of your body weight against gravity. There's always this dance. We can either go through this dance fluidly and efficiently or optimally, or we can be in constant fight to find the center, or the brain constantly work hard to find the center. As you can see, the center of mass in my body was completely oriented towards one side of my body. No wonder I had all that tension going on in one side of my body. And my jaw was almost shifting to that side of the body to create that orientation, or the way that my brain thought which direction I'm gonna go. Okay, so I know I get passionate about this so much and I keep speaking into it. I want to see if there's any question that I can pick up and create clarity on before I go deeper into this conversation. What is landing for you? What is making sense? What is completely new and you never heard of it and you never thought about it, but it makes sense? Yes, biomechanics is super important, and I'm a big fan of understanding the why. Yes, as a teacher, I could just take you through an exercise and you never know why you're doing the exercise. But I think it just takes it up a level when you understand what you're looking for, why you're doing what you're doing. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, when I got into this whole conversation, originally I was like, why no one is talking about it? Why there are not enough people speaking about it? And especially in the field of restoring the posture or the chronic pain and all of that stuff. And yes, asymmetry is what I'm pretty much talking about. So going back to the conversation, like talking about asymmetry a little bit here, we will talk about it a little bit more tomorrow when we are covering the breathing mechanics. So at our core, we are asymmetrical being. We are not balanced. We are not like the world tells you need to be balanced, but we need harmony. And that reflects in our life, that reflects in our posture, that reflects in how we fight gravity day in and day out. Why are we asymmetrical, you might ask? Because we have the heart on the left and the other side is empty. And just because of this, our breathing is different. We breathe differently left to right. And over time, the body knows how to handle this, but if we have our modern lifestyle, if we have constant stress, if we have an injury like the car accident that I had, the brain suddenly can't find that harmony, and we're constantly being like we're more asymmetrical than we're supposed to be. So in all of this work, I'm not trying to make you be symmetrical. We're trying to find harmony, finding a center that is more comfortable for the brain and for the body. Before I get into this work, like all of you, I've heard the analogy of shoulder blades back, chest up, and then also tucking the chin in for fixing the head forward posture. And obviously I taught all of those. That's what we've been told in a lot of training as a personal trainer and then later as a movement coach. But over time, as I continue doing this work, I realized what a false truth that is. And we're going to debunk some of that. So the first one is you should pull your shoulder blades back, chest up. So obviously I already explained that in my own posture. I'm going to exaggerate it in the way that I'm showing it. So imagine you're walking through life like this. You're fully having the chest up and you're becoming like really stretched and fully extended. So what's happening? So I'm actually really contracted in the back. I barely use my core for stability. And oftentimes my knee is hyperextended and I'm actually using not all of my feet, but a portion of my feet. So my feet doesn't have that ability to pronate and supinate to give me that energy to propel myself forward because I'm constantly being in this position. So the feet and the core is almost unable to do what it's supposed to do. There are so many other elements that won't be able to do what they're supposed to do, but I'm just going to target these two to keep it focused. So as you can see in this image, this is where we want to go. Like this is where our optimal breathing is. So obviously you probably have heard like tuck that pelvis under you and be here. So and squeezing the butt. Again, any position that restricts you or put you in an uncomfortable position for an extended period of time, that's not the posture we're looking at. We want a restful posture. So oftentimes there are one or two format of like that shoulder chest up, and at least the clients that I've seen. So they either have a massive flare up in the rib, and you also might have seen that one rib is a little bit higher than the other. That also goes back to the breathing and all the conversation around asymmetrical, that how asymmetrical being we are. And then also, like for me, in my case, I was so extended that my pelvis also tilting forward. That created a lot more tension in my lower back and a lot less engagement in my core. So I'm going to give some solution for you to start thinking about it and training your brain differently in a second. But I want to talk about these two main narrative around posture, and at least the narratives that we've heard all the time. The second one is the neck issue. I know someone mentioned forward head posture in the comment as well. So for forward head posture, yes, part of it is mechanical due to our lifestyle choices, but the result that is a symptom of your breathing. While like oftentimes people with forward head posture, they've got that rounded shoulder, collapsed chest, meaning collapsed capacity for breathing, and the neck needs to move forward for the airways to open up for you to actually survive. Again, your brain always prioritizes your surviving to move. It doesn't care how you move, how efficient you move, as long as you survive. So we need to create those neural pathways to train the posture into a position that is optimal. So through the next few days, I'll show you how to go into a more optimal position through hard work. It's funny because a lot of my clients always say, I'm not doing anything, I'm just breathing, but it's really difficult. Like no one would understand it. So I hope you get to experience that as well and really constantly giving input to the brain to do better. And then eventually the brain will say, oh, this is actually easier. Let's continue doing it this way. So now, also this is the neck position that I was pointing out. So how the chest is collapsed in and we need to move the neck for survival. So that's a breathing mechanics. And we always want to work towards a more optimal form of breathing. Your posture is not limited to your neck or your shoulder. It's a whole system. Okay, so your assignment. I want all of you to come up to standing as we're going through these exercises. So the first thing that I ask all of you today is stop pulling the shoulder blades back, chest up For some of you, this is really difficult. For some of you, you've been trying to do that, but it hasn't stuck because it's really painful. So I want you to stop doing that. And this is pretty hard because some of the clients that I work with, that they have chronic pain and we're working for them to build the strength to hopefully have less of it or none of it, is for me is really hard to get them to stop pulling the shoulder blades back because they've done it for such a long time that they need to intentionally reprogram themselves to not do it. So when we're eliminating a habit, I want to replace it with something else that you can start incorporating as a replacement. Every time, next time you begin thinking about your shoulders pulling back, so I want you to think about finding your body over your midfoot, soften the knee, so not bending the knee, soften the knee, and then start imagining if I had my ponytail up like this. So imagining you have a ponytail and that ponytail is being pulled up towards the ceiling. So you keep feeling yourself lengthening. I didn't say lift the chin up. I didn't say look up. I said feel that head being pulled up away from the rest of your body. And as you're feeling that length being created, now what you're doing is allowing yourself to surrender to that pull. You're no longer holding yourself, you're allowing that pull to hold you. So we want to keep again going back to the optimal position or optimal breathing position or optimal posture. You want to have your knee nice and soft over the midfoot, pelvis right over the knees, rib right over the pelvis, and the neck nice and free, but right over the rest of the body. We don't want to be here, we don't want to be here, we want to be right here in the middle. So I'm going to review what I taught you in a second. So think about, you've got that ponytail upward. That ponytail is pulling you up towards the ceiling. And naturally, there is this slight rebalancing, really small rebalancing happens. That the body shifts itself over the midfoot and you start feeling a little bit freer. Your practice is when you sense that pull, can you surrender to that pull? If you have any spiritual practice and you believe in something greater than you, maybe imagine that pull being that pull upwards to create that nice stackness in the system. So you will hear me talk about stackness a lot moving forward. So we want to feel everything getting stacked like I described. So take a moment, maybe you can even close your eyes to test this out and see how it feels. And I want you to report back in the chat and let me know how it actually feels in your system. You can do the exact same thing seated, but you want to make sure your feet are nicely planted and you're seated on your sit bone. So this is also the next exercise that I want you to get into a habit of doing. So if you work a lot behind your computer, I don't have any fancy setup. I'm a believer in changing things up because you meant to move. You meant to constantly shift your position. And so what you're going to do is not sit here. You're going to sit on your sit bone. But oftentimes what happens when people sit on their sit bones, they flare the rib up. So what I want is actually feeling the sit bone, the top of your hamstring right here. So we're not seated here, we're seated right here. So you're gonna feel that and then have your feet nicely planted and then imagine that pull above you, pulling you upward. Again, there's that natural adjustment, that rib comes over the pelvis and you create that better core stability. I want you to test it out if you've got access to a chair and see how that feels. And like I said, we never want to hold ourselves or become intense with this pull analogy. You're surrendering to that pull. Instead of you holding yourself, you're letting yourself be held. And your posture, unlike how we've been taught that it's a conscious thing, is actually at its core, it's subconscious. And the more you interrupt with that, so you're going to have problem with that pattern that is happening behind your awareness, but you're constantly trying to fix that consciously. Yeah, I think like you can with the keyboard setup, I wouldn't go into depth on that front, but as long as you sit on your sit bone and really feel that length in the system, you should be fine. And there are a lot of resources on where the eye level should be, where the keyboard should be, finding position that is very comfortable. Do we let the shoulders drop? You're not thinking about changing anything. So as long as you connect to that pull, soften the knee, the rest will take care of itself. It's the matter of trusting your body to do what is optimal for you. If you're trying to think through this too hard, that's why I never get people to practice being in a specific position. The only thing that I teach is creating that length and giving yourself to that length and relax into it. So I wouldn't say for you if the shoulder is going to drop or not. So it really depends on what the body needs. Do we have any questions so far before I get into covering a little bit of a breathing? And I know if you're new to this whole conversation, it might feel like it's almost in opposite of what you've been learning. And to some extent it is. Love that, Mona. Ooh, okay. So you feel like someone said they feel like they're holding their breath while they're imagining the pool. So we're going to cover the breathing in a second. So then we're going to redo this exercise to see if it changes a little bit for you. But with anything that I teach, I want you to explore it, like have that exploratory lens on rather than forcing yourself to that position. So maybe if you try to get so long too fast, the body will get anxious about it. And that's why like you're holding the breath. That's a theory. Obviously, I'm not working with you one-to-one. So I want you to really feel what length that is that allowed you to be a little bit more relaxed. But while I'm teaching the breathing, it might help you bringing all that pieces together. My shoulders want to drop, but it's a little bit painful. Ideally, if anything, with all these exercises, I want them to be pain-free. I never encourage anybody to push through the pain. So I want you to adjust your position a little bit, maybe make the length a little bit less. And again, we're going to do the breathing that might help tie it together. And if you didn't get your answer today, in tomorrow's session, and then day after that, we might get into that point a little bit more. What points carry the weight on base of our feet? I'm not sure if I fully understood your question. If you are asking where is the ideal or optimal posture position on the foot, I would say midfoot. But again, we're working towards a restful mid position or restful position. But when we're walking, we're going through the whole full cycle of the gait, meaning that going down, propelling ourselves forward and lifting off and then going forward, right? So I'm not going to get into all of that, but in this particular practice of creating length, you want to feel the weight of your body around your mid feet on both feet, ideally. Oh, nice, Kristen. I love that. Yeah, I've heard that a lot, that people start feeling a lot easier in their bodies. Beautiful. So now I'm going to go into the next assignment, or I'm going to cover this, but again, we're going to go full in depth into the breathing mechanics tomorrow. The first thing that I always teach in breathing is understanding what a relaxed, soft breath is. I talked plenty about a good posture is a restful posture. And to maintain a restful posture, we need a restful breath. A breath that is effortless, a breath that is breathing you instead of you trying to breathe. So we're going to test this practice together. And for those of you who have a lot of shoulder tension or neck tension, adjusting the breathing can create a massive change in the way you feel in your upper body. Our ribcage needs to expand 360 degrees for an optimal breathing, for a best lung expansion, plenty of oxygen in our system, and our posture feeling happy going about it. But when we don't have that expansion, and so many of us, we don't even use our diaphragm effectively 360 degrees, which we don't also use our core because of that, what we do, we're using our neck and shoulders for our breathing purposes. So I'm going to give you an example. When I tell people deep breath, again, I have nothing against with more activating breathing. I teach them as well for psycho-spiritual experiences, but not for postural restoration experiences. And we don't need that activating breath for surviving or going through our day-to-day. So I want you to really distinguish between the two. I have nothing against certain practices, but I believe there's an optimal way of breathing for posture. So when I want you to look at my body and my neck. So when I do a deep breath, see my shoulders and my neck all of it get activated. I want you to do a test ride for yourself. Let's do for 5 rounds of deep breath here. And I want you to specifically focus on what's being created in your neck and shoulders. Notice what's happening in your neck and shoulders. Do you feel your shoulders moving up, your neck tensing up? You feel like if you can see yourself in a mirror, you probably can see like all the muscles in your neck activating. After you've done 5 reps of deep breath, that's what we've constantly been taught to, and what some of us still practice. I want you to really feel like what was happening. Now, I want you to take a breath that there is no movement on the neck and shoulders. For some of you, this might be really hard because you've never experienced it. You've always been stress breathing. So give yourself the grace and that, again, putting that lens of exploring your body and your breath in a new way. How would you breathe if you weren't to use your neck and shoulders? I call it soft breath or ninja breath. So there is no sound to the breath coming in. And with every breath in and out, on the next breath in, I want you to see if you can soften it even more. In other words, can you let the breath breathe you instead of you trying to breathe? So we're letting go of the grip, we're letting go of the effort. And there's this beautiful thing happen between posture, breath, and life. And when we go through life really tense and uncomfortable or we're stressed, we see that reflection of it in our breath. And I always practice, even I teach clients that we do strength training together, that they get to learn to do the soft breathing even when they're under stress. When I breathe through, my belly, my neck and shoulder muscles are relaxed. Good. Good. So I want to get a sense of people in the chat that how do they feel when they start soft breathing? What happened? What happened when you let the breath breathe you instead of you putting the effort? Again, we live in a system that wants us to put effort into everything. Everything needs to be hard. But maybe we can start with the breath. That doesn't have to be hard. Even though we're going to work really hard the next few days on the breath, but very much at its foundation, we're really preparing the soul for a posture to be able to rise in a way that is comfortable, that is relaxed. A softening, yes. Glass, with the breathing practice, the soft breathing practice that we're doing, I don't want you to necessarily do the seated position that we were talking about. Just get into a comfortable position that you're used to, because I don't want you to change too many things all at once. We're going to do that in our training session, but for right now, just sit in a comfortable position and just practice softening the breath. Okay, please can you show me deep breathing looks like? Deep breathing, like really feeling what deep means to you. So for me and for a lot of people that I witnessed, when they do deep breathing, they get the neck and the shoulders working to get that deep breath. Almost like the rib cage is like lift up rather than expanding. So I want you to test it out for your body. You might experience a different kind of sensation, but noticing if your deep breath is creating tension in the system. So this is something that we do often that we don't pay attention. So there are benefit in creating tension when we are going through some specific stuff with spiritual practices, but for posture, we need that softening constantly happening. So I have 2 main exercises for you. Maybe 3 is a bonus, but 2 main things that I want you to practice for tomorrow. Lots of emotions came up from the softening. Wow. Yeah. When we finally allow ourselves not to work hard for everything or be stressed for the mere purpose of breathing and surviving. Yeah. Okay, so 2 exercises that I'm going to share, and with the bonus one, and I want you to really maybe put a timer somewhere on your phone if you want to be on your screen, or like maybe a post-it note somewhere if you work, like wherever that you can see it. So as a reminder, I don't need to be that specific, but anyway, so the first one is creating that length. So I want you to get into the habit, especially if you're used to pulling the shoulder blades back, chest up, and you're made to believe that that's your optimal posture. I want you to replace it by creating length in the system. If I go back to this photo, for example, or even this photo, what happens is our spine gets shorter because of these postural adaptation. So when we're creating length, we're letting the rest of body do what it needs to do, and we're also reestablishing that length. So even with the tuck chin, so people think they're lengthening their neck, we have a natural curve in our cervical spine, in our neck, and a natural curve in our lower back. So we made curves wrong, but actually we need them for free-flowing movement. And then also in the pelvis, that relationship with the pelvis and the lower back, that natural arch, allows for nice pelvis movement. So I'm not going to get into the pelvis. That's another series maybe coming one day. I want you to practice creating that length instead of pulling the shoulder blades back. That's your number 1 exercise. The second exercise is practicing soft breathing. I'm going to give you specific exercises tomorrow, how to establish that, and also I'll show you how to do an exhale for postural restoration purposes. But until tomorrow, I want you to practice that soft breath, because we need that as we go through exercises tomorrow. And the third, the bonus one, if you want to sit on your sit bone, the top of your hamstring, and practicing having both of your feet planted and creating that length. So are your assignments clear before we meet tomorrow? Put 1 in the chat. Let me know if you're coming tomorrow for the actual session. Like, this was an actual session, but we're going to do more breathing stuff tomorrow. Yay! Perfect. It's the same time as this. It's 5 p.m. UK time. So we are 48 minutes in. So for tomorrow's session, We're going to work with a little bit of an analogy for all of this to fully land in, for us to understand the purpose of our posture. And then we're going to go into understanding how diaphragmatic breathing work and how we can practice that. You need to lie down on your back for this. And we might also need wall space, but we certainly need wall space for the third day. I want you to have pillows, a couple of blankets or towels nearby, and get yourself in a comfortable space that you can really relax into. What are the benefits? Very much reclaiming your posture and stripping away any conditioning of the system, the lifestyle, the stress, the anxiety, all of that. The sessions will be recorded. You can check my work and then find them. Emotions goes away. I wouldn't say, like, I'm not going to get into the emotional landscape of the body. We're not going to touch on that a lot. But I'm thinking of doing an embodiment session later on, maybe in a couple of months, that we will be talking a lot more about the relationship of our expression or our body and our posture in relation to what we're holding in our bodies in terms of emotions. But even by improving your posture, I would say, like, the more you can create that length in the system from the biomechanics standpoint or from the state standpoint, you're going to change your state, and that help with your energy level as well. There's no harm in trying. All right. So you won't know until you try. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for being such an engaged audience. I really enjoyed teaching this, and I always get super excited about teaching posture. It really changed my life, and I wouldn't be here feeling alive to be able to teach this because of this work, and obviously so many other works that I've done. But this particular work really helped me out to be able to reclaim my power back in my body. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll see you all tomorrow at 5 p.m. UK time. Come prepare with your setup. So the more prepared you are, the more you're going to enjoy the session. Thank you so much. How was your experience finishing the first day? Congrats. Let me know in the comment section down below, how was your experience? What was something new that you didn't know before? And if you enjoyed this and you're ready to invest in yourself, in reclaiming your posture and standing and moving through life with sovereign power, make sure you check out the 40-day posture bootcamp starting May 1st. Looking forward to have you in the space.